Welcome to this Getting Ready to Assess Bite-Size session in accounting, and this session will look specifically at the lead examiner report. Lead examiner report is published for all of the external assessments on the T-level in accounting, so they are available for each of the core exams for the employer set project, but this session is specifically going to focus on the lead examiner report for the occupational specialism, what it contains and how it can be useful. So the lead examiner reports are really useful for teaching and understanding assessment, because what they do is they demonstrate what the students have done well in the cohort in the previous assessment window. The lead examiner identifies where there might have been misconceptions or skills that aren't as developed, so that you can then use that to make sure that your students are doing it. But they also tell you what they're doing well, so what the cohort has done well on, so that you can work with your learners to make sure that obviously they're achieving that as well. The lead examiner report also gives feedback on performance. So in the core papers, it'll be question by question. On the occupational specialism, this is going to be task by task. So it will look a little bit different to what you might be familiar with if you've used it for the core papers. It will have large chunks of text where it's pulled through what students have done, and then the lead examiner has given their commentary on what mark it's achieved, why it's achieved that mark, and maybe what it could do to improve on it. So it's really useful to sort of show students what other students have done, and to show them what the lead examiner is saying would have been needed to make that a better piece of work. The lead examiner report also includes tips for improvement. It has other summaries in there, and it can also provide guidance on how to answer questions. Now, that's more specific to maybe the core exams. There is some information on ways that students could improve the evidence they're generating for the occupational specialism. Within the lead examiner report, the first thing that you will get is an introduction to the report. So what has the series been? Is this the first series, second series? You might find how many students have taken the series. You might find information on how well they've performed. It will depend on the assessment type as to the sorts of information you'll get. But you can see here that this was the summer 24 lead examiner report for the assistant accountant occupational specialism. So it was talking about the fact this was the first series. It talks about how it had been set out, and it also talks about the number of tasks in there. You can then see that on the right hand side here, the next thing that appears in the lead examiner report is an introduction to the overall performance. So it's a breakdown of what tasks they've been asked to do. So you can see here we've got task 1A doing the trial balance, 1B a bank reconciliation, for example. Task 4, they were preparing financial documents for a limited company. 7, they did some audit issues. So it gives you that overview of what it was that they were doing. And it also means that you can go back and look at the relevant past paper, and you can share it with students to check that you're looking at the right lead examiner report to the work that you've got in front of you. So the next information that's shared within the lead examiner report is information about the scripts, so the overall cohort performance. So as you can see here, the lead examiner for the summer 2024 series said that scripts have demonstrated that there's knowledge and understanding that's relevant to the brief. They were able to select and use relevant techniques. They're able to provide solutions. They're able to use digital and math skills. So there's a whole range of things that students have done well that have been identified. And you can see there that many of the scripts are of a good standard. So this means that students have obviously been prepared well, having looked at the specification, the sample assessment materials and other material that's available, and that teaching teams in centres have therefore prepared their students, sharing this knowledge with them, and they were ready to take their occupational specialism. And you can see here that the marking scheme, it says that the marking scheme allows an opportunity for students' own figures to be awarded. So because there's calculations here, it can be very easy for students to maybe transpose a number or if they're using one bit of data to then feed into another piece of data, that it can be easy to carry errors forwards. So that within the occupational specialism, there are some tasks that obviously allow for errors carried forward, so that we're not penalising students, that they're being marked positively when they've had to use those materials to sort of move forward. And it says that obviously calculations were carefully checked by the examiners throughout the marking and awarding process. So it's just showing you that there's that consistency and validity there to the marking to make sure that students are getting the outcomes that they deserve. So the bulk of the lead examiner report then is formed of examples of student work from the occupational specialism. So it's often 2 or 3 pages long, and it will show you a whole example of a task from a student. And then at the end of that section, the lead examiner is given some commentary on why it's achieved that, or what it would have been that could have done better, or all those sorts of things, or misconceptions that might have been prevalent, or maybe where they've had to use error carried forward. So it's really useful to go and have a look at those. But at the end of the lead examiner report, you then get this page called the summary. So within the summary, you can see here that what the lead examiner has done is they've broken it down into what students who are of a pass level have typically demonstrated, and then what students who are performing more of maybe a distinction level have demonstrated in terms of knowledge and skills. So you can see here at a pass, they had an adequate ability to record and process data, an adequate ability to produce financial documents, an adequate ability to analyse information. Whereas, say, over in the distinction, you can see that they've demonstrated a comprehensive ability to do it. So those things like the financial data or the financial records, it's about the quality and the depth of the answers that they're giving and how robust they are, so how accurate they are when they're doing it. And then what you can see is once the lead examiner has considered these, they've then continued on to say what they recommend centres could do to help their students to improve in future cohorts. So in the 2024 summer series, the lead examiner recommended that centres make good use of the specification, sample assessment materials, sort of the past papers, case studies, curriculum planners, lesson plans, which are all available on the website to continue to develop student skills. And it also says here things like refer to areas for consideration outlined. So go back through each of the tasks and have a look and see what the lead examiner had said needs to be developed or where the misconceptions are. So it might be worth as a team after each series getting the lead examiner report, going through, highlighting any sort of misconceptions or areas for development and creating an action plan. And that centres need to ensure that they read the pre-release carefully for 1A, because obviously when you're setting up your Sage, your Xero, your QuickBooks, how you set it up can have an impact on students. If maybe a piece of information is missed, that can affect the assessment. So here you can see that the lead examiner is recommending that careful attention is paid to that. So it might be worth having a 2 sets of eyes on approach, and one member of staff set it up and then have a totally different member of staff come along and just sort of quality assure that what has been set up matches identically to what the pre-release is. And then the last one here is to say that obviously the appropriate forms like the digital answer booklets are available, and that they're recording their work in those rather than maybe using blank Word documents. So again, that's another sort of process there, that making sure that when you're setting up your exam accounts and when the exam teams are downloading these documents from the Gold Padlock site, that all of the documents are making it into the exam accounts, and that maybe there's a quality audit going on before each task takes place to make sure all these documents are available and that they're then being uploaded. So there's a whole range of activities and things that the lead examiner report can guide centres to, that aren't just about assessment, physical assessment of the tasks, but also other things that they can do to make sure that the students have the greatest opportunity to achieve well. So an activity that you could do then is have a think about what are the key things that you could look out on a lead examiner's report. So it might be for the occupational specialism, you might consider the core or the ESP as well. So when you're looking at it as a teaching team, what use do you think it could be? What sorts of things might be useful for you as a teaching team in terms of delivery or planning and assessment? But equally, what sorts of things would be useful for the students in terms of helping them understand what the standard is, helping them to identify what they're being asked to do in an assessment? So it's a good activity to do at the start of the academic year, or if you've got some CPD time where you're actually being able to consider these sorts of things and do planning and assessment. You can also have a look at how you can use the lead examiner report within your centre. So as well as within teaching, what else can you do with it? Could you have a look and use them as maybe WAGOs where you share them with students on the wall? Could it be that you use it for be the examiner type activities where you've taught the students what the mark scheme looks like and how examiners work? So maybe you're giving them some of the work from the lead examiner report without the commentary and asking them to be the lead examiner and write some commentary. It might be that you give them the work and ask them to identify either with or without the lead examiner commentary what could have been done to improve the work. So then they go back through and they add to it. So there's a lot of different activities that you can do with the lead examiner report. Some lend itself more to the core papers potentially than the projects, but again, it still works quite nicely for both. And you can use those then within both your CPD, your planning, your assessment, and your teaching to make sure that students are prepared. Thank you for listening to this bite-sized session on the lead examiner report for the occupational specialism. I hope it's been useful.